After the success of Natural Born Killers, Stone was set to make a movie about Panama military governor Manuel Noriega, and he signed a 3-picture deal with New Regency Films Company to make any movie he wanted as long as they approved the budget. The film about Noriega was eventually scrapped, and Stone turned his attention to one of the most controversial figures of American history. Stone's insistence on making a film about Richard Nixon was met with disapproval by New Regency, partly because of the subject matter, but more because of the budget Stone wanted. Eventually, Stone had to back out of the deal to find other producers willing to finance the film as he wanted to make it. The fact that Stone wanted to make a movie about Nixon at all was one of the most controversial decisions of his career up to that point. Though I do recognize I seem to be saying that a lot with Stone. But that aside, people expected a portrayal of Nixon as a monster who must go down in history as some vice character to rival Richard III. What the movie actually became is a biopic that seems unusually thoughtful towards its subject, especially considering who is sitting in the director's chair. Like most of Stone's films, the cast is filled out with an impressive roll call of big names. Anthony Hopkins' character of Nixon is supported by his strong but critical wife, played by Joan Allen. There's also James Woods as Bob Haldeman, David Hyde Pierce as John Dean, Ed Harris as Howard Hunt, Bob Hoskins as J. Edgar Hoover, and perhaps best of all, Paul Sorvino as Henry Kissinger. All of them embody their characters despite any differences in physical appearance, and it's fascinating to watch history unfold. Nixon is one of Stone's longest films, at just over 3 hours long, and the director's cut has an extra 20 minutes added to it. The film was deemed too boring for many production companies, and they passed on the project until Disney's Hollywood Pictures and Synergy supplied the budget. The movie follows Nixon's life, detailing his humble religious beginnings, his failed presidential campaign in 1960, his triumphant return to the public eye, his 2 terms as president, his downfall, and all the dark secrets that the man tried to hide from the world. Anthony Hopkins' Nixon lurches through the film hunched over as if these conspiracies and responsibilities are weighing him down. Throughout the film, he wonders why people hate him so much, justifying himself with his successes as president. He's also repulsed and horrified by the corrupt system embedded in U.S. politics, which is referred to in the film as the Beast. The movie's also filled with references to poetry, history, and mythology. Nixon plays out in an almost operatic manner, bearing the man's soul to the screen, in moments such as when he speaks with Richard Helms of the CIA, or when he's confronted by anti-war protesters at the Lincoln Memorial. If I had to pick the 2 most poignant scenes in the film, the first of these scenes would be when Nixon agrees to step down as president, and then prays to God as he breaks down, weeping at the way he will be seen in history. In the other scene, he stares up at a portrait of his legendary rival, Jack Kennedy, and in one line, perfectly summarizes the way Kennedy and Nixon's legacies have been influenced by popular opinion. Nixon is one of Anthony Hopkins' best performances, and it's also one of those rare times when the legendary David Hyde Pierce gives a straight-up dramatic performance. Even after seeing him as Niles Crane on Frasier for so many years, I can totally buy his earnest portrayal of the young John Dean. Nixon has been criticized as being too long and trying too hard to cover Nixon's life. I disagree with that opinion personally. In fact, this question of biography versus making a good movie has plagued biopics for years. What biopic truly represents who a person was in real life? Who's most authorized to make such a biography? Stone, one of the most outspoken left-wing directors in Hollywood, seemed a ridiculous choice to make an unbiased movie about Nixon. And yet, Stone resists turning Nixon into a monster, much like Der Untergang avoided making Hitler into just a foaming monster. And yeah, the length can work against it, but really, I think the only people who are going to watch a movie like this would be prepared for such a film. Nobody's going to accidentally wander into this movie thinking it's a comedy or something light. People will know what to expect, And if they don't want to spend over 3 hours seeing a compelling drama about Richard Nixon, they won't see it. Sadly, that mindset turned out to be the general opinion. Despite the critical acclaim that Nixon has received over the years, the film was a failure at the box office. Despite being a fascinating look at one of the most controversial US presidents who ever lived, people were polarized or uninterested. Like I just said, general audiences were mostly uninterested. Left-wingers were disappointed at how Stone seemed to humanize Nixon for them, and right-wingers insisted that Stone had been far too negative towards him. Nixon was the last film in Oliver Stone's golden age, and what followed immediately after is a film that has plagued my admiration of Oliver Stone ever since I first saw it. But that's another review.